Hey guys, I'm back tonight. Another project in the shop that I want to go over with you guys. It's not so bad there. It's going to be a continuing project that we're going to do over the next, might take a couple of months. It's an old vintage belt sander, and we're going to totally redo it. I got it home tonight and I just sort of oiled everything up. I will confess, I sort of took some of the stuff apart and oiled it and then put it back together just to see if it was even going to get loose, and it's nice and loose now. We're going to totally rebuild this thing. It's got some issues. Let me turn this camera around. Actually, let me go ahead and turn this camera around. So right here it is. It's, like I said, it's an antique. It's got some issues. This pulley down here was broken and welded, and as far as I can tell, that's the only real major issue. But the problem with that is that, and the other thing is, there's no tracking on this thing at all. So, at least not that I can tell. So one of the major issues is that once you get this thing set up, with that broken pulley, it's not really, it must be out of line a little bit from when they welded it, and the belt is scooching all the way over and hitting the edge of this table. So we got to locate a pulley for it, which might not be the funnest thing to locate. The top pulley seems to be fine. Everything's turning okay on it, and everything else seems to be okay. It's just that bottom pulley kind of screwing us up. So I am going to pause it here, and I'll turn this thing back around and we'll talk about it. So first thing we're going to do is go ahead and take this thing apart, and I'm going to do that probably on this video. It's not a big thing. I'm just going to take everything apart and oil it up. There's two grease fittings on this thing. One is right here. There's one grease fitting right up here at the top of the this pulley, and then there's another one right down here underneath the table for these two pulleys. They're both clogged. I think I could take them. The bottom one I've had out, so I know I can take it out, and usually sometimes it's just old grease that clogs some things up, and you can hit them with a little bit of heat and it'll kind of soften that grease up on the inside, and then they'll work fine. This top one, probably the same thing. The only thing is I can't get it loose, so I'm gonna have to play around with that a little bit. I might have to take this whole assembly off and heat it up just a little bit just to get it loose. And if they don't work, then I'll just put two new grease fittings in. It's not that big a deal there. But we're gonna have to find a new pulley for this bottom. So that's where we're at with it right now. I'll go ahead and start tearing this thing apart, and we'll just video it as we go. And like I said, this is going to be kind of a long project. Might take a little while to get all the pieces and parts, but I'm just going to do like little updates as I do it. I'm going to use this in my blacksmithing shop. It's going to be a mostly for the woodwork. I guess you could grind some steel on it too if you wanted to, but I'm going to set it up so that it's a nice 90-degree sander, so I can do all my 90-degree work, and then leave the angles to the other belt sander. So anyways, that's where we're at for now. Okay guys, so I'm taking this thing apart and been working on it. It's kind of cool in a way because all you need is a couple flat-headed screwdrivers to take this whole thing down, and a wrench for the grease fittings. Other than that, it all comes apart with a flat-headed screwdriver. I got the grease fitting on the bottom loose. This one up here on this arm is it's tight in there, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the whole pulley assembly off because I wanted to clean it up anyways, and I'll probably paint it that way too. And I'll just touch that grease fitting with a little bit of heat and see if I can't get it to come loose. And I may just buy 2 new grease fittings for it, not even mess with the old ones. Another thing, I was playing around with this thing last night. It's morning now, and I had a hard time with this thing with the tracking. There's no tracking on it, and I couldn't get the belt to ride decent on the pulleys. Well, I was playing around with this bottom pulley down here, which does need replaced eventually, but I was playing around with it, and I decided, why not try flipping the pulley over? So I took the pulley off, turned it around, put it back on, tightened up the set screw, and the tracking is still off a little bit, but now it's probably as good as it ever was, because now, and let me turn this around and I'll show you. At least now, when I turn this belt, and I'm sorry it's wiggly, by hand anyways, I don't know what's going to happen when I put the motor on, it stays in here. It stays in between the slot. And the way these things are set up, these slots can't really be, this slot really can't be widened or anything like that, the way these things are set up. So I'm just going to be happy with it being in the middle of the slot. My table's loose, I just have it sitting there. But anyways, I'm going to be happy with it being in the middle of the slot, and it is what it is. Like I said, I'm going to be happy with it riding in the middle of the slot, and it is what it is for right now. I mean, it's an antique grinder. I know it's not going to be a perfect thing, but, you know, another cool thing about this thing, which is cool but isn't cool, is, and I was taking this thing apart, and the 2 little helper pulleys, and I believe those are on my other, I got the directions for my other grinder, and I'm sure this one's the same way because it's the same exact grinder, just an older one. You put the 2 pulleys in. Let me see how that works. If I remember right, you can take the 2 pulleys, scooch them in somehow, and reroute the belt so that you can grind the inside of something too. Can't remember exactly how it works. I got like I said, I got directions on my other one, so all I gotta do is look at that, because the pulley assembly is exactly the same basically. But the only thing that's cool is, and I'm putting all my little parts in a bucket, the only thing that's cool is the 2 little helper pulleys that are on this. One's missing, and it's missing, I mean, everything. It's missing the rod, the set screw, and the pulley. So we'll have to make up the rod. And thank gosh, I have a piece of brass rod right here, which is exactly what the other one's made out of. And all it is a brass rod, and it's about, if I was to guess, maybe 2 inches long. And then there's a hole drilled and tapped in the end of it for a small screw to hold the pulley on. I could get this. I'll be able to do this here in the shop. I now have a buddy with a machine shop, but I'm sure I can do that here. That's not a big deal really at all. And then another project we got to do for this thing is the 2 helper pulleys are wood, so we're gonna have to go out to the lathe and turn 2 new wood pulleys for it. And I got to get some dimensions on these pulleys because I'm not sure what they're supposed to be. I could probably steal the dimensions off my other grinder and make them that size. The only thing is it's made out of wood, but I think I'm going to do some research and see if these, what size these are. This is one of the old pulleys. You can tell it's just worn out and, you know, not any good. And this dimension on this edge out here might be the right dimension, but I'm really not even sure. I don't even know. Let me take the table off this thing. I got the table off this thing too. And that's another thing. This right here is the reason why you can't make this slot any wider, because the table is just a steel grid and then a wood top. And you know, I've seen some pictures of some who cut this out, or I should say cut this part here out and made theirs wider, because one of the other things about this thing is that these belts are a pain in the butt to change, because you got to almost take the table off to change the belt, which is kind of a bummer. So we might do something different there too. I'm thinking that maybe just by changing this backing plate that goes against the belt there, maybe we could do something different with that, and it might give us enough room to get that this thing off of the machine. If all else fails, that might work actually. Maybe that's how they did do it, because it seems like that would probably work. You might be able to slide that thing off with that backing plate off. But anyways, that'll be something that and two screws to get that backing plate off is not a big deal to have to change a belt. Really, it's better than cutting up the table. So you know, that's another thing. So anyways, I'm just taking this thing all apart. Backing plate's going to get taken off, and it's going to get just a light sanding on it, probably on the belt sander, just to shine it up again. It's not going to get painted. We're going to make a new wood base for this thing, and I got to figure out what kind of wood I'm going to use. But here's a backing plate, and all it is just two little flat-headed screws, just like everything else on this machine, and they just slide into the thing. You just tighten them up. Well, I took the screws all the way out and the backing plate off, because obviously we're getting ready for paint. And this belt never even came with the machine. I put it on because I was trying to play around with the tracking on it, and now that I got that halfway figured out, it seems like not going to be that big a deal. So basically, I can't get the belt pulley, the pulley for the belt that goes to the motor, off this thing, and I really don't want to screw with it too much to try to get it off. So that's the only thing that I can't get off, and I'm gonna go ahead and just tape that off. Here, it's this pulley right here. I'm gonna go ahead and just tape this off. Probably cleaned it up with a wire brush and tape it off. This pulley will come off right here. This whole assembly here will come off, and that's when I'll try to, after I take it off, I'll try to touch this with heat and try to get this grease fitting out. And the same with this. This is a nut and a bolt going through here. I can't get them loose either, but I might be able to either use a little bit of heat or just, if they break, I'll just replace that. That's not a big deal. But that goes to this arm, and this arm is the part that's missing. It's missing this rod right here, which is basically the same brass rod that I have. And if you look at it, it's got a little tiny tapped hole in the end of it. So I'll have to make a new one of those. And like I said, I think I could do that right here at the house. That little tapped hole is just for a little flat-headed screw that holds the wooden wheel on. And then the wooden wheel rides on this brass. There's no bearings, no nothing like that. So that's a pretty simple thing. I'll have to see if I can get this out, maybe get a measurement on the length. But it's exactly the same as this, only as this one up here, only reversed. So anyways, let me try turning this thing around. So anyways, that's where I'm at with this thing. The way I'm going to do this is I'm basically going to make a bunch of little videos off and on in between all my other videos, because I don't know if I'm going to have time to work on this thing all day, every day. The next step will be, like I said, I'll take this pulley off and this bottom pulley off, which I'm sorry you guys can't see this. I need to figure out a better way to set this camera up in this garage like this, but that doesn't even help. But anyways, maybe a little bit there. Anyways, I'm going to take this top part off next, and then take this bottom off. I did take these bearings in this thing were all real tight and not very. I thought they were bad, to be honest with you, and I realized that this thing just hadn't been used forever, and all the grease inside the bearings was just all. It almost looked like a hard plastic because I scraped some grease off the outside of the bearings, and they were real hard and, you know, just not grease anymore. They were just like a hard plastic. So what I did was I took this and cleaned it up a little bit. I'm going to take it, it's still a little bit tight. I'm going to take it, the whole wheel assembly, and soak it in thinner. And hopefully it'll break all that grease down in them bearings and get it all looser and make all that stuff gone. And then I'll let it dry out real good, and then I'll put the new grease fitting on, and we will re-grease that, and hopefully it'll be back to where it should be. There's no wobble in these bearings, so I don't think there's anything wrong with the bearings at all. So we're just going to keep the bearings and use them. I think they just need a good greasing. And same with the bottom one, although I took the grease fitting out of this bottom part and I soaked these bearings with I just took a little oil can full of thinner and just kind of squirted it inside the grease fitting hole, and then I tipped the machine up so that it would lay in there, and every once in a while I'd give them a spin, and now they spin pretty good on their own. You can give it a good spin and they spin pretty fairly free. So that's probably where I'm going to leave that at too. So yeah, so I'll take it off this wooden platform and take these two pulleys off, tape up this pulley. After I clean it up, I'll probably just take a wire brush and my angle grinder and clean it up a little bit. It's just for looks. And then we'll go ahead and paint this. And I don't know what color I want to paint it. Originally it looks like it was green. I don't know. I don't know if I want a green one. Maybe not. I think I have a whole bunch of gray here that's machine grade gray paint. It may end up being gray because I have the paint. We're kind of doing this on a budget anyways. So, okay, anyways, that's it for part one to this setup. Part two, we'll finish taking this thing apart and we'll go ahead and paint it. Okay. Oh, and by the way, if you like the video, like, subscribe, and share. And if you like these machine project videos, I might do a couple of them actually. I'm thinking about doing another build too, a machine build where we make a 2x72 inch grinder. If I can get my welding skills a little more up to date. But yeah, that might be a project in the future.